Yeah, plus the fact that you could just unplug yourself. You know, how many of you have had a baby? Any of you?
I asked about it once.
There's a couple folks here that have had babies. I've never had one myself, but I understand that it would be quite complex to suddenly just unplug. You can't just unplug the baby.
Well, there's a condition where the placenta becomes loose from the wall of the.
Two dudes trying.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, what's the anatomy of the sac that contains the fetus in the lining of the where the placenta comes unattached? The lining goes
The uterine wall.
Is that what it is?
Closest thing I can imagine to that is the creature that comes ripping out of the guy's stomach in Alien.
Chest burster.
You know. Of course, my favorite though is the one from Spaceballs. Right.
Actually, Space Pirates.
Space Pirates has a different
Remember
version
seeing
of
Space
that?
Pirates? Yeah, it's called Space Herpes, and it's literally a chest burster that looks like a breakout.
However, so today abortion is legal up to a certain point in its gestation in how many states? Do you know?
More than one?
That's absolutely right. Is it legal in Alaska?
Womb. Yes.
Yes.
It's called the womb. The law of the womb.
What do you think? Is abortion okay?
I think it depends on the reason.
Were any of you aborted?
No.
I hope not.
Probably not.
I'm
For
really
you.
concerned at the lack of people showing up for this particular lecture.
I did notice that.
Yeah, there's not very many people here today.
Like it's kind of like a
Well,
convenient.
part of it is like
I think
how
part of it
beautiful
is
that
if
is
you look
out there.
outside too.
Yeah. Everybody going as
What was your last question? Have any of us been aborted?
Have any of you been aborted? And obviously the answer is no.
Is that our quiz question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd you get born? I don't know if I can handle that one.
Call mom real quick. Mom.
Mom, was I aborted?
Well, I tried, but
Oh man.
Yikes.
They only had plastic coat hangers.
You dodged it like Michael Jackson.
Oh my God! Well, Section 8 in college.
Maybe I shouldn't have come to the. I was raised Roman Catholic. The Catholics still today, of course, argue that life is sacred, and so we shouldn't do anything to prevent life, including abortions. If you go back to Aquinas believed abortions were okay up until when the fetus became ensouled, which was when it started to move, because at the time they thought the soul was the source of movement.
yeah, that was debated, wasn't it? Because some people said it was as soon as.
It's just, as far as I know, the church did actually approve abortions up to roughly 3 months
Huh.
for a while. But what happened, of course, is as they found more and more about the nature of the fetus, they backed it up to the point where once the fetus kind of like the Monty Python song, "Every sperm is sacred."
Yeah, that's what
Once the sperm and the ova come together and form there's names for it when it's the first couple of days and stuff, right? You know. I used to know all those words, but now that I'm getting older and drinking more, now that I'm getting older.
What's in the cup?
Agua. Low. Voici low.
Those are actually really nice. They do hold temperatures warm on cool. I have one of those myself.
cold water from the fountain, actually.
Same.
So I did buy a bottle that says essence of water on it.
So it's not actual water. It's just-
I mean, it was in the store. I couldn't believe it.
Essence of peach and
Have you heard of the whole raw water trend right now?
Yes, but I'm not
Say
interested.
that again?
Raw
The
water.
raw water trend where people are like bottling up water like out of ditches and ponds and stuff and selling people this whole natural raw water and people are eating it up.
Yeah, and dying.
Yeah, that too. There's been a few different things that people have caught from that. It's pretty funny.
Just weed them out.
I don't know what
I'm
happened.
also
selection
recommend
at its
more
finest.
labels.
I did take a picture of it,
It's a good little scheme though, you can make some money.
but it's
Awful.
just hilarious.
Idiot.
But so, since I was raised Roman Catholic, I was convinced that abortion was wrong. As I've mentioned, when Don and I got married, we planned on having 4 children. And after a few years of trying, we discovered we couldn't. Found out why, a medical reason. In any case, so we started trying to adopt, and we succeeded. We adopted 3 wonderful children and another one. Actually, we love all 4 of them, but yes, one of them is a
Unique one.
not eunuch, but unique, yes.
Space pirates, you know,
Um,
thing.
However, so that puts us in an interesting position because a lot of people think, wow, you're actually living the right life. You know, you're not making more children for this world that's already overpopulated, but at least you're trying to help take care of ones that are already out there. Well, that wasn't our intention. We wanted to have a family, and that was the only way we could get one. But it also does teach me that not everybody can have children that wants them, and I know lots of other people that are in that situation. And it's a shame that it's so difficult for them to get children, especially healthy children, to raise. Because most of the children that are available are children that are damaged in some way or have become damaged because of the whole process. So that's pretty frightening. I saw just recently in the paper, of course, because this is a constant issue. Some person wrote to the Daily News an opinion. If you're really pro-life, then what you ought to do is be out there helping all these kids that are starving or et cetera. If you're so pro-life, instead of trying to stop people from having abortions, you should be out there trying to take care of all the children that are out there that no one's taking care of. That's an interesting argument. Not sure that really works. What did you think of her argument? I'm keeping in mind this is before it was legal, so she was trying to persuade people. I suppose one of the main questions is, what does it mean to be a person?
Whose definition of life were we looking at last week?
That was Stuart Kaufman. But that's not my source for definition of life, of being a person.
Okay.
Being a person. So is a fetus a person?
Depends on who you ask, I suppose.
According to the church, it is.
Can a fetus complete a cycle of life?
Depends on what you mean by that, too. Of course, when I made my joke to Stuart, I was joking because all my cells are alive and they're reproducing and working. So that That's definitely fits the definition of life. He's talking microbial life. You know, what would that be? But I've got my own definition of life that I think is worth arguing for.
Oh, wow, I need to take a closer look at that webpage.
No, I'll figure out.
This is my brother's stepson's wife, and she gave me permission to include the picture, so that's. She told me it was okay for me to use the picture. And by the way, that has since become a baby, and it's been growing, and was rooting for the Eagles.
Do you have permission from the baby?
Not yet.
That's what he said.
Does that become an issue at 13 or 18?
It's going to be interesting, because a lot of parents that I know are posting really silly pictures of their infants doing dumb things. And, those children are going to be looking for jobs in a few years. So. And internet, these pictures aren't going to go away. So keep that in mind when you're posting crazy pictures of your young kids, doing weird things.
I thought about that because we haven't had a generation grow up yet with Facebook being out as big as it is with moms and stuff, literally videotaping and picturing every single day of their life. So it will be quite interesting to see what kind of negative and positive effects it's going to have later on, and also and see if there will actually be any government step in involvement or whatnot too with social media.
Just for people abusing the right to be stupid? It's running rampant.
Well, there are some things that could get you in trouble if you post them on, as some politicians have found out.
We
So-
just had a presidential election pretty much based on social media, and we've evolved from face-to-face to radio to television, and now we're at social media for elections.
Twitter.
Yeah. The Twitter elections.
Well, so here's my definition of a person. And it's left ambiguous because I'm not trying to take sides. So if it sounds wishy-washy, do you use that expression?
Yes.
That's deliberate. So a person has to have all of the following characteristics. It interacts with other individuals that consider themselves as individuals, and the type of individual each is viewed by each individual as defined by the other individuals.
You explain self-awareness?
Not yet. This isn't self-aware. It's number 2, where it's self-reflecting, or can be. Now, I've added this part. So I'm plagiarizing 2 people here. Just so, so Peter Singer is one person who's trying to define a person. And I'm plagiarizing his, except that I add this part. That it can be expected to become self-reflecting. So a fetus potentially can become self-reflecting when it's 2 years old, born and 2 years old, roughly. So I've added a section to this that enables you to interpret the fetus as a person because of the potentiality it has. Peter Singer famously doesn't include that, so that if you have a 1-year-old child you don't want, as far as he's concerned, you could just destroy it. That's okay. 2 years old, now it's iffy, because now it could be self-reflecting. If it's self-reflecting, now it's a person. But prior to it becoming a person, if you're going to abort a child, or you decide you want to destroy a child because you don't like it. As far as he's concerned, that's the same argument. He's not actually saying he's for this. But people thought that, and that's why he wasn't invited to Germany and other places, because they feel like he's for killing children. Actually not. He's not for killing children. He's not even for killing fetuses. Feti, more than one fetus. He's done that, right? And he's trying to point out to you that if you're okay with killing a fetus, what's the difference between killing a 1-year-old child? It's out of the womb, but guess what? A child for relatively early, 3 months, can be taken out of the womb and still live today, right? So if you're going to argue a fetus can be killed, what's the grounds for saying that it's different when it's a person? And it seems like what makes it different is that it's self-reflecting. It knows that it has a self. It passes the mirror test. So if you put it in front of a mirror, it looks at the mirror and sees itself and knows that it's looking at itself.
Like that movie too, but gorillas don't.
But we do have laws that tell us it's okay to kill people. That's why we have some states that have the death sentence. Why we have self-preservation and counsel laws in states.
Right. I actually include that in one of these.
There it is.
There's exceptions.
But also going back to your number one, how can a fetus be consider itself an individual when it can't take its own breath until it becomes separated from the mother?
Well, is this going to cover me here? Because
Well,
I
that's being
inserted this?
That's self-reflecting in terms of a mental aspect, not a physical aspect.
So should I add something like this to this part
His
also?
definition never covers physical aspects. Your definition,
Is mental.
yeah.
Well, that's because corporation isn't human, but it is a person.
If a person claims sole proprietorship with the corporation and calls himself, he drops all of his protection laws that being the CEO within a corporation gives him. So therefore, a CEO can never take sole proprietorship of a corporation.
Well, some corporations are legal persons, though. Isn't that what
No. that's not
incorporation
true.
is?
That's
I know a lot of people are upset about that. But that is legally, I believe, the way corporations are treated, yes?
They can sign their contracts, but not as.
They cannot say I, the company. They have to refer to themselves as the corporation. Otherwise, they lose all the protection laws.
Trying to include that, right? So I'm not talking about just humans. It could be chimpanzees. Trouble is, I don't really communicate with other chimpanzees in a way that I think of them as the kind of individual I expect them to be in my society. But ants might think this way with one another, and maybe as far as they're concerned, but I'm not concerned about ants. Or aliens? What about robots? Will this definition cover a AI?
it will.
I think that's part of what I'm thinking about too. Spock is an alien Vulcan, right? But
Green
I
blooded.
guess that depends on how much will we are allowed to give the actual AI and what type of AI system we're going to use. If it's going to be a multi-entity system or it's going to have a multi-entity system slaved by one AI unit.
and this is up to us. We're the ones deciding this. This is like a democracy deciding who they think are individuals that are persons, that have person status in our society. And we can decide others are not. And that's because it has to be appropriate in its position in our relationship. So for example, if it is in intolerable pain, it cannot be alleviated without it being killed, which we refer to as euthanasia, right? In this situation, both it and others redefine it as not a person. Reason I'm suggesting here that we don't kill persons, we have to redefine something as losing person status before we feel justified in killing it. And by the way, not everyone
Isn't that
would
going
agree
back
with
to
this.
The first one, where it says, well, not the first one, the first one we were talking about, that other people have to acknowledge that it's an individual in order for it to be an individual.
Right.
Well, you have to recognize something for it to be before you can take it away.
Well-
I think he's referring to it as just they lose their humanity through their own actions and will us as other humans have to acknowledge that and take that factor out of it because there's no place in this world for them to exist.
Oh, okay.
And we might argue over whether that's really, are they at the point? So,
It's a
my
good place to be the one that puts a judgment like that.
my elder, who is now at the point where she's no longer able to identify us. She doesn't recognize anybody, even her loved ones, right? And she's clearly in agony, not able to eat, dying, but potentially can live still for months in this situation. And by the way, add to this the economics of this. This is a very expensive situation because everything has to be done for this person, right? So we're talking at least $1,000 or more a day, right? Right. And they're in pain and suffering and not self-aware, except for the pain, which that's not really what we mean when we're saying someone's self-aware.
I mean, like, I think like there's some religions where like you declare something as a spirit and whatnot, and so should we like define them? I mean, we can say that they're an individual or whatnot. They have a soul, like a tree or a rock or something, and damaging that rock changes their soul or hurts. I don't know. I'm not exactly 100% sure about any of that. I mean, still, like, could that logic? I mean, if the majority believes something is precious, then it becomes precious, I guess. But it's kind of weird that, I mean, like, so
Well,
basically what he's saying
what
is
goes
the
through our
majority of
minds
people are for abortion,
when we
then
say
it
that
shouldn't be
someone
allowed.
is suffering and it's wrong for us to keep
Yeah.
especially because now what we have are all these medical devices that keep the body alive, even though what we think of as the individual is gone. Should we do that? Or should we unplug this person? And there's two different kinds of euthanasia. One is active and one is passive, right? So passive is where we unplug the person and the person dies. Active is where you inject them with something that, like the dog. I'm old enough, I've had lots of dogs, and I've felt
Benzodiazepine and opiates.
euthanizing them was a much better way of ending their lives. So, everybody all gathers around, we say our last goodbyes, pet the dog, even video the dog as we say goodbye to it. And then the vet comes in and delivers the needle, right?
It's really tough.
It is.
And there's active and passive euthanasia legalized in, I think, some states have it, I think, and then I know one of the some countries in Northern Europe also have legalized active euthanasia.
You guys remember all that house fuss about Dr. Kevorkian?
Yeah, I already have a will in mind that says the full plug is non-negotiable.
Oh, we're putting a snuff film on in class.
No, I didn't cover that.
You sat on the floor.
She had cancer. And it was at the point where she couldn't move anymore on her leg.
We're gonna put my dog down in September.
And we can have a little ceremony when we get the ashes back and put her in front of St.
A
Francis.
little over a year ago for the family dog Roscoe's stomach cancer.
It's really hard.
So many people have died in my family from cancer that even the animals start to.
This is so sad.
Yeah.
Really? This is the leg that's got the cancer.
When was that?
Pardon?
When was that?
June 20th,
Oh.
2016.
I was on the same
Is it
time.
wrong for me to put this on video and put it on YouTube?
It's your dog.
They show stuff like this on animal, not like this, but I mean, they show other animals.
It's context, boss. You good?
Misogyny, wrong shape, modern side of stuff.
But so euthanasia, this is a real issue for us because of the expense. And a lot of doctors refuse to actively euthanize, but passive euthanization is. And frankly, I've heard from doctors that even before it was legal in different places, that doctors that knew their patients basically made it possible for them to pass away.
They like starve them and stuff sometimes.
Oh, that happens, yeah.
Yeah. Just don't feed them their
We've had legal conflicts between parents that wanted their child continued alive, and the medical folks are all trying to say no. You know, the hospital's trying to, you know,
But you can't
stop
afford
it.
this. Like, it's
Yeah,
not
who's
feasible anyway.
paying for all of this? But now we have techniques that, as far as we know, we could keep a person alive even after they're brain dead.
On bypass, that just happens. Yeah, I've seen.
They
I've
they
seen it
kept
actually.
one woman alive so that her baby would come to term. Actually, they removed the baby before it was full term, but they knew it would be able to be survive.
God, that's so creepy though.
That's amazing.
It's amazing, but it's like.
I mean, like you grew up with a dead person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the part that's like, jeez.
Didn't even know that was possible.
It could be worse. It could be that your father has died. Your mother decides to have his frozen sperm planted in her ova, finds one that works, has it inserted in her womb, and gives birth to you long after your father had died.
That's actually a thing.
That is a thing.
Was
I'm not inventing this stuff. That's
I think there's like a limit though for how long sperm can be frozen.
well, I know the one woman was in her 40s when she decided to do this, and that was her eggs though. She had saved her eggs, and it turned out that it didn't work. So she said, "Beware! You know, if you're thinking that you could save your eggs till you're older and your career is all set, and then have children, it might not work." So that's interesting.
I know there's one aspect where a lot of people who have children who develop into what is the word now? Well, who have trans children, and they will never become sterile, so they can't produce themselves. So what a lot of parents will do is they'll freeze theirs, and so this way they can have a biological son or daughter who's not theirs, but they're at least blood related in some manner.
Mm-hmm,
I know that that's a common debate as to whether or not people do that.
Well, second, yes? Second, what if it's an intolerable state due to pain or emotional distress? I added that. Distress, emotional distress. These could be quite young people. they kill themselves. So, suicide. So in this situation, how do I frame it? I have to frame it in a way that they're not killing a person. That I would conclude that they no longer think of themselves as having the kind of life that they think of as worth living. So they don't think of themselves as a person anymore. Of course, others will feel, this is a disconnect, because that often, of course, hurts others way more, because of the loss of that child or parent. And often that seems just totally why? Why did that happen? But I've had a son, the one that I mentioned is having trouble, call in the middle of the night, out in the cold, planning on jumping off of the Penny's parking lot, for example.
Oh, you can still possibly survive that depending on how you land.
No, on top of that, I don't think you.
I did have one student who was wheelchair bound,
50 feet.
very, very ill, taking a course with me. Turned out that at a certain point when he was healthier, he was discouraged with life and he decided to kill himself, so he jumped off the Ship Creek Bridge, and that wasn't high enough. So he lived. But that's why he was in the wheelchair the time he took the course.
I mean, if you felt bad about life now, imagine now. Sad.
How did you know that? Did he tell you?
Yes. I haven't seen him for years, so I don't know what happened. He wouldn't have gotten better, though. His illness was terminal. So he was trying to exit before things got bad.